If I got a nickel for every time we got a tall, hot erudition character with long red hair, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Hey everyone, it's Sevy, here to help you learn about the beauty of our Prince Charming Argenti, a man of simple gameplay but elegant damage. This guide will go over his kit and traces, Eidolons, best relic and light cone builds, and team synergies to help this knight in shining armor shine even more. Let's begin.
The beauty is universal. She is within our grasp and beyond the expanse of the cosmos. Argenti of the Honor-clad swears to you. The beauty is eternal.
Argenti is a 5-star physical erudition DPS that excels in multi-target combat as expected of erudition, deals huge nuke damage with his high-cost ultimate, and has an incredibly easy playstyle to work with. Let's go through his kit and traces. Argenti's basic attack just deals single-target physical damage and generates 20 energy. It's nothing special, and his skill is what you should be using every turn anyway. The skill attack deals AoE physical damage to all enemies and generates 30 energy. This deals more damage and gives back energy faster to get his ultimate ready, which is his kit's most important part. Argenti's ultimate is a physical AoE nuke attack that has 2 versions, a half 90 energy cost and full 180 energy cost, the first we've seen in Star Rail. You can see that his ultimate circle has 2 layers that fill up, and the icon also changes wherein the flower bud indicates the 90 cost ult is ready, while the flower in bloom indicates the 180 cost ult version. The weaker 90 cost ult only deals a one-time instance of AoE damage. I find this low cost ultimate helpful in overworld battles or basic enemy mobs where you want to finish the fight quickly but don't want to have to use an overpowered ult against weak enemies. So it's more spammable, which is great for quick and easy mobs. When it's time to get serious, the full cost ult deals an even bigger initial AoE damage, followed by 6 single target physical attacks that randomly hit enemies. This is better for huge nuke damage and to better dispose of multiple targets. Those hits can also focus fire on one target if there are no other enemies left, which can give him pretty good single target damage potential, especially in boss fights. To help Argenti recharge his ult and increase his damage output, we have his talent, which does 2 things. First, Argenti regenerates 3 energy per enemy hit with any of his attacks. Second, it gives him a crit rate stack per enemy hit, which can stack up to 10 times. At trace level 10, each stack gives 2.5% crit rate, so that's a max of 25% additional crit rate, which makes building him with a good crit ratio much easier. As you can see, these are most effective versus multi-target enemies to help him recharge and ramp up his crit rate faster. By spamming his skill, triggering his talent's energy procs, and continuously defeating enemies, Argenti is actually able to regenerate his energy relatively well for a 180 energy ult. It generally takes around 3 to 4 turns to fully recharge his ult. Of course, energy recharging allies, relevant buffs, and energy abundant combat scenarios can help him to recharge his ult sooner. As for his technique, using it dazes enemies around him for 10 seconds, which prevents them from attacking you. If you enter combat while they're dazed, Argenti deals physical damage to all enemies and regenerates 15 energy, which gives you a damage and energy head start. For Argenti's Ascension and bonus traces, the Ascension 2 ability grants 1 crit rate stack at the start of his turn to help ramp his crit rate up faster. His Ascension 4 ability lets Argenti generate 2 energy whenever a new enemy enters the battle, which can happen in multi-wave battles or when bosses summon minions. This further assists with his energy generation. And his Ascension 6 gives a 15% damage bonus against enemies at 50% or less HP. These are all very useful passives designed to make him stronger and recharge energy faster. As for stat bonuses, Argenti gets HP, attack, and physical damage traces. For his traces leveling priority, level up his ultimate, skill, and talent altogether for more damage and a higher crit rate buff. Then you can ignore his basic attack since he won't be using it anyway. Argenti's damage at E0 is already very good, so only the most dedicated of Argenti simps should consider pulling his Eidolons, which are all about boosting his damage. E1 makes his talent stacks now give additional 4% crit damage, so that's a max of extra 40% crit damage, a good straightforward damage boost. E2 gives a 1-turn 40% attack bonus upon using the ultimate if there are at least 3 enemies, also another damage boost, although a bit more conditional. E3 increases his skill and talent levels. E4 gives 2 talent stacks at the start of battle and increases the limit to 12 stacks, which raises his damage potential even further. E5 increases his ultimate and basic attack levels. And lastly, E6 makes his ultimate ignore 30% of the enemy's defense. Defense ignore is very potent, more so when stacked with other sources of defense shred. So this will be an unexpectedly large bump in damage. Now let's move on to Argenti's relic build, starting with his stat preferences. Since Argenti already has an innate crit rate buff, your body piece will most likely be crit crit damage, and you'll get crit rate from substats to help you get a good crit ratio. However, it's still possible that you might prefer a crit rate piece if you really have very little to no crit rate substats. I generally recommend having a baseline of 60 to 70% crit rate, which includes his own buff already. For his feat piece, you can go for speed or attack. Speed helps you hit higher speed breakpoints and faster turn cycling, but attack can also work well, especially if you can compensate for it through speed-related buffs, speed substats, or advanced forward effects. For Planar Sphere, physical damage boost is most recommended. Attack is a generally worse but still okay alternative or temporary piece, and the gap can be narrowed depending on the external damage and attack bonus buffs he receives. Then for the Link Rope, you generally want attack percent. An ERR rope loses raw damage but can potentially shorten the ult recharge time, and if this grants additional ultimates, can output more damage. But if you are in energy abundant combat scenarios or have an energy buffing teammate like Tingyun or Huohuo, your ult regeneration may already be anywhere from 2 to 4 turns on an attack rope, making an ERR rope unnecessary and less impactful. Still, you could always personally test between your pieces to see the difference on your end. As for substats, you're mainly looking for crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent. Get the speed you need to hit your desired breakpoint or target. Break effect is also welcome, but much lower priority. Moving on to his relic sets. For a flexible and efficient to farm build, go for 2-piece combos of the champion set for physical damage bonus and the attack or speed sets. 2-piece combos will give you more room to choose pieces with good stats, which can bridge the gap between full set builds. For a full set, there's the 4-piece champion of Streetwise Boxing set. It gives 10% physical damage and a stacking attack bonus, which can reach a maximum of 25% attack. The attack bonus needs to ramp up first by hitting or getting hit, which can be RNG dependent too, so its full potential will take some time. However, if you compare it to combos of the 2-piece champion plus either a 12% attack set or 6% speed bonus set, the difference is around 3 substats worth, which you could certainly just compensate via better substats on the 2-piece combos. So essentially, don't be pressured to farm the full set, and better substats are generally preferable. A niche full set alternative is the 4-piece Genius of Brilliant Stars. Ignore the 2-piece bonus since it's the 4-piece effects defense ignore that's useful. This set has competitive potential if used versus quantum weak enemies and stacked with defense shred debuffs, but I wouldn't recommend farming it just for Argenti alone. It's best if you already have an existing full set from another unit, then you could try switching it over to Argenti. For planar ornaments, the Inert Salsoto and new Firmament Glamoth are the top recommendations, with 2 close alternatives. The Inert Salsoto buffs crit rate and ultimate damage for bigger nuke damage. Argenti's crit rate buff will count towards the 50% crit rate requirement, so it'll be much easier to achieve. But this set is paired with the Bellabog set in World 6, which is a more niche set that may not be useful to farm for you. The new Firmament Glamoth set is also very good as it gives an attack buff and a damage bonus buff when you hit 135 or 160 speed. The 135 speed is the minimum goal here, so make sure you'll target that if you use this. You're generally not expected to hit the 160 speed threshold unless you're getting a lot of external speed buffs. For marginally worse but still very viable alternatives, the Space Ceiling Station gives an attack buff plus more if the wearer has 120 speed. The Rudolent Arena is meant for basic attack and skill damage focused units, but it's still an okay option since at the very least it gives crit rate by default, and as long as you can hit the 70% crit rate, the skill damage bonus is still utilized. These 2 sets are quite efficient to farm as well since they're paired up with great support sets. Ultimately, the difference between these sets are marginal enough, and it can be a substat game as well. I personally recommend farming the world that gives you the most value with both of its planar sets. Now for Argenti's light cone options. For your default free-to-play light cone, there's the Seriousness of Breakfast, which you can max superimpose from the Forgotten Hall shop. It gives a permanent damage bonus and a stacking attack bonus by defeating enemies. For better options though, Today is Another Peaceful Day is the Battle Pass Erudition light cone, and his best 4-star light cone if you're a Battle Pass buyer and plan on max superimposing this. It has higher than average base stats for a 4-star and gives an unconditional damage bonus based on the user's ultimate energy cost, maxed at 160 energy. Argenti's cost is 180, so he's already past that, and at S5, that can reach up to a huge 64% damage bonus. Genius's Repose from Gacha is the next best 4-star. It gives attack and a conditional crit damage bonus by defeating an enemy. You can proc the bonus particularly by killing enemy minions, which many mobs will have alongside them and or in a pre-boss wave, so this would generally have high uptime. At high superimpositions, the bonuses are pretty high, and with consistent buff uptime, this will output very very good damage. Make the World Clamor is another viable 4-star, ideally at high superimpositions. It gives extra energy at the start of battle and a huge unconditional ultimate damage buff, but since this only really buffs ultimate damage versus the other 4-stars that give more general buffs, it falls behind them, assuming equal superimpositions. For 5-stars, Night on the Milky Way is the standard 5-star Erudition Light Cone, which gives an attack buff based on how many enemies there are, plus a damage bonus if an enemy gets broken by any party member. This is maximized versus multiple enemies, but the damage output can get inconsistent as the number of enemies changes. If you manage to pull it in the standard banner, then it's definitely still a solid choice, but don't use your Starlight currency to purchase this in the shop. High superimpositions of the BP Light Cone or Genius's Repose can also outperform this. If you have Before Dawn, Jingyuan's signature Light Cone, it's still a very good option for Argenti. He doesn't make use of the follow-up damage bonus, but it still gives very high base stats, plus a crit damage buff with skill and ultimate damage bonus buffs. And for his best in slot, there's Argenti's signature Light Cone, an instant before a gaze. It gives him a huge crit damage bonus and an ultimate damage bonus based on his max energy. At S1, that results in a 64.8% ultimate damage bonus. Moving on, let's talk about Argenti's team synergies and comps. Argenti's default team composition will be that of a hypercarry, which typically has 2 harmony and or nihility characters, and a preservation or abundance character for survivability. Argenti's teammates' main priority is buffing him up, ensuring he has a steady source of skill points to use, and helping him recharge his ult, all while keeping him healthy, of course. As an Erudition character, Argenti doesn't draw as much aggro, but survival teammates should be ready to shield, heal, or draw away damage from him and keep your entire team safe. Let's go through the different team roles and highlight certain teammate synergies. For Harmony teammates, you have the usual picks offering their own unique advantages, though if you have Tingyun and Bronya, they will be generally highly recommended. Tingyun has her energy restoring ultimate, which is a huge help for shortening Argenti's recharging cycle, and he can more easily achieve 2 to 3 turn ult recharge times. That's on top of the attack and damage bonus buffs she provides, and she'll also act as an SP generator for the team as well. Bronya has her advanced forward effect to let Argenti take extra turns per cycle, and of course her huge damage related buffs will help him dish out bigger numbers. You'll want to tune her either as a fast Bronya who can achieve a more SP neutral playstyle, or a slower Bronya that moves after Argenti and is easier to build but will be SP negative. The new physical harmony unit Hanya has SP generating abilities as well as attack and damage buffs, so that's a big help for your skill point management. Her ult can also buff Argenti's speed, and since Hanya is also physical, she can use the Planetary Rendezvous Light Cone and or the Penacony set for more physical damage bonus. Asta's speed and attack buffs will also be good for faster turn cycling of the entire team and boosting damage. Yukong also gives big attack and crit buffs, but requires some speed tuning to sync properly with Argenti's turns and ultimate. As for nihility supports, Pela is a highly recommended debuffer, mainly since her AoE defense shred complements Argenti's AoE focused playstyle. Plus, she's a very effective SP generator with a situationally useful buff dispel skill. On the other hand, Silverwolf also has very potent defense shredding and other debuffs, but is single target oriented. Still, her weakness implantability helps in creating weakness and breaking opportunities, and can enable monophysical or dual physical quantum teams. In multi-target scenarios, Pela generally has an upper hand, but either way, both have very useful debuffing utilities. Walt can also work as he can slow enemies, amplify their damage taken, and is good for breaking imaginary weak enemies efficiently. Then, use your preferred or available abundance or preservation unit to sustain your team, though of course limited 5-star sustains generally have more comfort or utility. At the end of the day, feel free to experiment with team comps and adapt according to the combat scenarios and your personal preferences. Finally, here are some observations regarding his auto-battle behavior. Argenti prioritizes using his skill, as it should be, and only uses his basic attack when the team runs out of skill points. However, since the AI can have poor SP management depending on the team, I did notice some unfortunate cases where Argenti defaulted to his basic attack. The biggest thing I noticed though is how Argenti uses his low cost and full cost ultimate. Basically, it seems that Argenti will use his 90 cost ult if you're only fighting basic enemies, whereas if an elite or boss enemy is present, Argenti will reserve his ult until the full cost is ready. This is generally a good thing, since in many cases his full cost ult is already overkill against basic enemies. At the end of the day, the main factor in his auto battle efficiency is how the AI uses his other teammates, particularly regarding their SP management, to ensure that Argenti maximizes his damage, and that the other supports are utilizing their abilities effectively. If the team is well invested and the supports have good enough sustain and SP generation, your auto battle will pass in medium difficulty scenarios like farming high high-level domains, and can still possibly pass higher difficulty battles like Advanced Floors in Forgotten Hall or Simulated Universe bosses. And that's it for this Argenti guide. Honestly, he's probably one of the simplest and straightforward DPSs we've had in a while, which isn't a bad thing by any means. I guess he really brings out the beauty in simplicity. But his damage is by no means simple, as he can absolutely dominate AoE content like the erudition unit he is. Let me know in the comments what you think of Argenti, whether you've pulled him for your account or did his trial. If this video helped you out, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!